Show us your ultimate power, everyone. It's Deep Dive Zone, a Sonic review series for fans of all shapes and sizes, and welcome to the penultimate episode of Sonic Battle. And my god, this game took us 2 months to get through.
It's.
I
I,
mean,
I mean, I was surprised at. I mean, yeah, it's padded. We've talked about that
it
a lot,
is.
but there also is just a lot of dialogue. I mean, there's
The
stuff
dialogue,
happening,
big
but
one that takes up
it's
time.
it's in a lot of words.
I think I said this before. This game really would have benefited almost benefited more being a visual novel.
If they
Yeah.
had upped the quality a bit, then
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think, other than, like, the sprites and the music, the story, as weird and stupid as it can be, has certainly been the most valuable part of the experience, even as we've criticized it the whole way through, because at least there is stuff to
Yeah.
talk about.
Yeah, the story's been the more interesting part. The gameplay's been, once we got past like what, fucking Rouge's story, we've barely talked about the fights.
Yeah. And this week will be no different, as we're
Yeah.
covering Shadow's story here, which starts with him, like, waking up from a nightmare, basically, I think.
Is that what it is?
It's really weird, because it starts sort of before everything, with Shadow kind of discovering Emerald, or rather just the Gizoid at the time,
Right.
and trying to destroy it, but it sort of flashes through everything that Shadow's done in the story, which is not that much, because he spent like 80% of this game asleep.
I don't remember if it's after that or somewhere in that, but I have a note that at some point Eggman refutes that Shadow is the ultimate life form, which kind of surprised me. I would think that, given it was Gerald who worked on Shadow, that he wouldn't take that title lightly, but maybe his admiration has been broken after the betrayal in SA2.
Maybe.
I don't know. I think that if you can survive a fall from space, you might be the ultimate life form.
Well, no, that's why I'm saying it's surprising that Eggman at one point says that they're not, which I think the reason for that becomes a little clearer later, but, well, shortly, actually.
Yeah, although in terms of gameplay, Shadow kind of feels like the ultimate life form. I will say, he is a super powerful character.
He is, but he also feels really floaty, and I found him kind of hard to control.
Well, yeah, he zooms around super fast, like you would
Right.
expect Shadow to, but...
Yeah.
But he is, yeah, I mean, he doesn't have a lot of friction underneath his feet.
Right.
Not that that matters much when his specials shred through enemies so much, but... And I'll say, I think Shadow... I'm thinking, is Shadow the best character in this game's story? Because I would say, is there any moment that I feel Shadow is out of character here? And I don't think so.
So I think my problem with that is Shadow is probably the least character here. He doesn't feel like anything beyond, I don't know what the right word is, but he's just not particularly interesting.
I would disagree, because I think that throughout this, Shadow, with, in what interactions he has with Emerald here, is displaying a level of sort of... There's a bit of a conflict in him, because he views
Yeah.
Emerald as a threat, which he is,
That
but
was
he's
the
also like,
interesting
this
part.
guy is a living weapon, and he kind of has to come around to the idea that Emerald is kind of a person with autonomy.
Well, yeah.
At least for me, it's like he's kind of going through a little bit of the trauma that he's got from everything that went down in the arc. And, it's like, that makes it really hard to reckon with the fact that Shadow is 100% in the right about Emerald, as we'll see at the end of this game.
Yeah, he is.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I mean, Shadow, I guess he's probably the closest to his pre-established character. I mean,
He is.
I don't know, Sonic isn't particularly out of character, but he's not complex either.
Well, to be
So-
fair, Sonic had a few moments in this game that made us scratch our heads. I to be honest, I don't remember what they are because this game is that unmemorable.
I mean,
Well,
there's
I
the
think we're
screen
getting
flickering
ahead
power.
of ourselves a little bit, and we should probably actually talk about everything with Shadow here before we make
Yeah.
broad remarks. But yes, as you said, Devin, it's revealed that apparently Emerald is actually the ultimate life form, or maybe he was another ultimate life form project.
Yeah.
But Shadow seems to treat Emerald like, oh, you're the ultimate life form. because not me, because I was something else. But you definitely are. Although actually, no, that's part of it. He's actually like, no, we're both the same. And so even though Shadow had his see, this is the thing that actually gets me. Even though Shadow had his whole arc, he actually suddenly is like, no, you and me, Emerald, we're just weapons to cause destruction. It's like, did you not learn anything from Sonic?
Well, that leads me into something else that I have to mention in a second.
Yeah, they do touch on that, so it's not completely ignored. But it's a weird way to start. It feels actually like a step backwards.
Hmm.
Part of this is that it's like, if we're saying that Shadow is saying that in a way that's like regretful, like he's kind of almost pissed off at his creators for having made him, then I can see it, because that even ties into like Shadow the game. But I think it's a weird way of saying it. Probably, I think presented differently would be okay.
Well, that's what the
Yeah.
story is all about. So
Right.
yeah, I think the first bit of gameplay is beating up some guard robos. Oh, how remarkable, I must say.
Yeah.
Although I do
Yeah.
agree, do be looking stylish. I love
He
their
does look
attack where
cool.
they
Yeah.
just snap their fingers and create an explosion. Yeah,
That was really cool.
that's just simple cool. I
That
have to like that.
yeah, that is just cool.
This is the only set of 2D sprites I think Shadow has ever gotten or ever will get.
Really? Yeah, I
Well, I
guess he's
mean,
not in any of the advanced games.
yeah, no, the only game where Shadow is ever playable in 2D is Sonic Forces.
Right.
And
Huh.
the number of sprite-based games he's playable in can be counted on one hand, probably.
Hmm. Interesting. It doesn't surprise me.
No, I mean, he's very much a character tied to the modern idiom, and at this point,
Exactly.
2D Sonic was still trying to evoke the classic games without literally
Right.
bringing back classic Sonic. Part of this discussion is a little bit. I'm having a bit of a struggle with it because I'm sort of going over the broad strokes of the story without the nitty gritty of individual events, because it's like, eventually we get on a quest to go for the Emerald. I don't know what happens between the start of the story and then, though.
Well, so Shadow overtaxes himself,
Right.
and then Rouge is like, "Hey, stop that! You got to rest."
Right.
Which is actually pretty endearing that Rouge is caring for Shadow, and then equally so that Shadow surprise. I was like kind of surprised that he actually does express some amount of gratitude in return, and then after he's feeling better, then he throws out the line, "I cannot allow myself to die just yet," which is just great.
It
So edgy. I love it.
is very edgy. In a fun way, though.
Then they go over to confront Sonic because, of course, Sonic is with Emerald. And this is where Shadow talks to Sonic and is like, oh, Emerald must be destroyed. He and I were both just weapons of war. And then Sonic says exactly what I just said, which is like, yo, I remember there was a Shadow that thought of himself as more than that, directly referencing SA2, which is neat. So it's clear that the game realizes there's a conflict here. I, I mean, it's not completely unbelievable. It's like Shadow, maybe felt a little better for a while, but now he's been put into a stupor again.
Right.
I feel like that's what the game's going for. 'Cause Emerald does remind him of his origins.
Well, and this was why I was bringing up it as almost a trauma response, because even if you could say that Shadow got over himself, the idea of there being another thing like him might not
Mm.
necessarily, that might set him off basically.
That's kind of how
Yeah.
I viewed it.
But
No. Yeah.
it puts into conflict with me. You, Lauren, have been, noting every instance where the game establishes that Emerald is incredibly dangerous, as well as
Right.
points that the character itself could be acting in a malicious manner. And so
Right.
having this feels like it flies in the face of that a little bit.
We'll have to talk about that in depth when the game decides to bring this all together. But yeah, it's very odd. So I guess next off, Shadow is like gonna destroy Emerald, and then Sonic is like, "Oh yeah, I'd like to see you try to destroy Emerald." When both of you have good hearts, I know you won't be able to do it, which is interesting. Sonic is really putting a lot of faith there, but he's
Right.
completely correct. And instead, Shadow is like, "Okay, well, if we're not gonna destroy each other, then we'll go together. So begins our path to ruin."
Amazing.
Next, there is. You ready? You ready for this? You know who's next? Can you tell? Because the way I'm building it up, yeah, that's right. It's Chaos Gamma. But he is used slightly more effectively here, if for one single line after he explodes again, which again from Shadow, where he says to Emerald, "Do you see? This is the fate for weapons of war."
You gotta transform Emerald into a strict pacifist. Not Shadow though.
No, not Shadow.
No. Well, I would. The point is, Shadow. He just needs to be reminded of. But you can never change him, really.
Maybe this is what it all means. Maybe this is the alternate future from Shadow the Hedgehog, where Shadow believes that he is a robot, and that explains all of the timeline inconsistencies in this game. If Shadow believes that he's a robot, then his behavior makes a lot of sense.
It's funny you bring up timeline
Yeah.
inconsistencies because there's a line in this story that has me convinced that this has to be an alternate universe.
Oh yeah, what's that?
So, but just in the scene before the Chaos Gamma fight back at Emerald Beach, they mention the Chaos Emeralds, and Sonic specifically says that he's heard that this is the exact line. I've heard that he who collects 7 Chaos Emeralds will be granted unlimited energy.
You've
So-
done that.
That
Exactly.
really
exactly.
sounds like a mistranslation
Okay,
of like
I
know.
it's
or
got to be a
happened
mistranslation.
before.
But in my mind, that confirms that this is an alternate universe where Sonic's never used the Chaos Emeralds. And also, that means if the plot of SA2 still happened, which it has to have, based off of comments from
Yeah,
Shadow's
direct
here. How could it be?
direct developments there.
Shadow is here. The plot of SA2 has to have happened. That means they had to have figured it out without going super.
That might explain how Shadow survived, actually.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this was a universe where the Bio Lizard was never made.
Maybe they just figured out how to fire the Eclipse Cannon and vaporized it.
That's also possible. But so I saw that and immediately thought that's either a translation error or this is an alternate universe, and fuck it, alternate universe is funnier.
Yeah.
That would explain a lot of other bits of weirdness.
It really
Um, Yeah, it really just feels like the writers weren't super familiar with a lot of the details. I mean, it could have been intentional. Who's to say?
I mean, yeah, if it was intentional, then so be it. It explains why the characters are all fucking weird.
It definitely makes for some interesting comments, though. It's a weird game. We get
Yeah.
into some of this game's lore again as Shadow and Emerald go to the Gimme Shelter to do some research. I think they go to the Gimme Shelter. Yeah, they do.
Yes.
Where they do some research on Emerald with I think Rouge is there too, and they learn about sort of the original research some more. Where apparently Emerald was all bad at first, and then our good old friend Gerald Robotnik modified their programming, but I guess Emerald was too complicated for him to completely reprogram. And so instead, he was only able to like make the flip to like 100% good or whatever you want to call it when all the 7 Chaos Emeralds are collected. So that's the reason for that whole thing. I guess it's not actually a trick. I thought it was a trick, so that actually kind of surprised me. Apparently, that's just the way it has to work. A little bit contrived, that's for sure.
A tad.
Is this where they name drop the fourth great civilization, or is that only in the diaries?
I don't remember.
I don't remember, but I've heard that somewhere.
Well, it's just that's one of the great mysteries of the original of the old school Sonic canon, because
Right.
later games would retcon that as being the Nocturnus, and even like some of the Archie comics would eventually say that one of the 4 great civilizations was Nogus's species, but I have no idea what it meant in this context, other than they
Interesting.
built the Gizoids.
Right. Okay. Huh.
I love that. Those are like fan theories that come up with different explanations for unexplained things, but in this case, it's just different continuities.
Yet another
That was
reason
a
we
good
have to
one.
freaking hunt down the writers of this game and kidnap them until they tell us what they meant.
Well, I assume they
Yeah.
were just adding some mystery to it because whether it be intentional or unintentional, there's a lot that isn't really explained in this game. Either
Yeah.
way, you learn about that, and then Emerald gets the final Chaos Emerald, and nothing happens.
Yeah, nothing really happens. It was a little underwhelming.
Well,
I
he
was
does
literally
give a
like, "Are
speech
you
about how
kidding
scary
me?
he
Like,
is.
final boss right now?"
Yeah, to be fair, he does kind of have a little speech there, but
Well,
Which is
yeah,
the
he almost goes off the deep end, and then Gerald's
right.
program kicks in, and he's like, "Oh yeah, it's all cool."
Which
that seems like the
I
inverse
was
of what I would
really
expect Gerald to do.
underwhelmed. Yeah, honestly.
Maybe this. I guess it's because he went. He did this before he went off the deep end with Shadow.
True.
That has to be it. Yeah.
True.
Um. Yeah. I don't know. Gerald's a weird guy. But yeah, everything goes perfectly as planned, and I was like, huh. That's yeah. That's a really weird way, to do it. I guess it's to try to fake you out again, because the whole game's been building to like. There's this story writing technique which I kind of like a lot of the time. Maybe not so much here. I don't know. I think it's fine, but where you hint at one thing extremely heavily, and then at the last second you reveal that's not actually what it was at all, and then you actually reveal that definitely is what it was. That's what they're
Hmm.
doing here. But while they're waiting, so that hopefully you forget about that, and then they'll actually surprise you at the end. The game decides, okay, well, Emerald, why don't you go say goodbye to everyone because you got to go leave and stretch your wings because you're a grown boy now or whatever.
You're a whole ass man.
You're like, so, you know what? Actually, okay, I've asked this question already. At what point does Emerald become like fully sentient, or I guess fully self-aware is a better way to put it?
It's one of those things where it's like a gradual transition, so there's
Yeah,
no like hard cut.
right. That's what I was thinking. Is it just like a gradual transition, or is it like, he goes from 5 to 6 Chaos Emeralds and suddenly he's a real boy now?
I don't know. I feel like probably there was a little of it always there. It's just it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
chained down by the lack
Yeah.
of like power or something.
I
Like
guess. Yeah.
real Emerald couldn't come out fully, if you will.
Yeah. I guess he
Yeah.
required the Chaos Emeralds to really come out of his shell.
Well,
Right.
autonomy or otherwise, can we talk about the fucking mask off moment that comes after this?
After,
I'm trying to remember what mask off moment you're talking
are
about.
you saying after you fight Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Rouge, Amy, and Cream?
No, that is the moment. The game
Oh, yeah,
the
that was
game
stupid.
refuses to give you the end of the story until you go fight every other hero in the game.
Yeah, no, that was stupid.
That was when I was saying you have to go say goodbye to your friends. This game's way of saying goodbye is you fight them, of course.
You beat them. Yeah, no, it's
Ugh.
it was
It's like
so weird.
even it would have been bad if you just give me all of those fights in a row. The fact that you have to individually walk around and talk to each of them
You
and
have to
then
hunt
fight
them
them.
down.
You know, if
That's really annoying.
if you were putting them on the receiving end of like a revenge narrative, that would be actually really funny, but you're not. They're just doing it for fun.
Yeah, they're doing it purely for the hell of it because, like, oh, we need to say goodbye. Well, how else do we say goodbye to the universe? We beat each other. We beat each other's teeth in.
I mean, that would be, that would make things simpler in real life, wouldn't it?
Sure.
Bye, Grandma.
Bye, Grandma. I'll see you next week for dinner. Punches her in the stomach.
I'll bring a 2x4 next time, Grandma.
Christ.
Back to Sonic
Anyway.
Battle.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just blatant filler. I mean, literally after every single fight, the character's just like, I have nothing else to teach you. Bye, Emerald. Except Amy, who's like, oh, thanks for helping me with my diet.
Yeah, that's all Amy cares about.
God, I'm really glad this didn't set a precedent for her character being like this.
Horrible? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she's not gonna. It's like it's not that she's gonna be better in every other. Well, she is going to be better in every other game. It's not that she's gonna be great in every other game, but
But
like
she's not really this bad.
even in 06, she's better than this.
Right.
She'll be okay by like Unleashed probably, but and when it's like it's not, it doesn't even really feel like an ending. It's like maybe if they want this to be like, oh, this is the ending where you stop playing if you just want things to be happy and fun, because like nothing happens in this story. The ending is just everyone is Emerald's friend.
Yeah, honestly, this could just be the ending of the game, in my opinion. Like, we don't need what's coming up next.
All that. Yeah, that's fine. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, it could be. Well, because the next story acts as kind of a fake out. You thought that was the end,
Right.
because I didn't even realize there was an Emerald story.
Neither did
Because
I.
why would there be an Emerald story? You already play as Emerald through all the other stories. But anyhow, yeah, I mean that all happens, and then you go over to Shadow as the last one. Who, it's weird after Rouge and Shadow do the research about Emerald. Shadow seems to be like, oh, okay, so this is what you really are. Okay, great, cool. But then Emerald comes back and he's like, I still don't believe it. Prove to me that you're not just a weapon and you're actually like a full person. And so you have to do it again. It's most likely just to make an excuse for not one but two fights.
Right.
And they're not just the back-to-back ones. The second one's got Sonic. I can't remember the reason.
I think he just shows up and was like, hey, it's time to duel, fuckface.
Yeah.
But after that, Shadow's like, well, okay, maybe you really are more than a weapon. He still doesn't really believe it.
He
It's
really
like
doesn't.
every time we get to the end of one of these stories, I think about how just we could have gotten here much simpler ways.
Again, this game should have just been a fucking visual novel.
Even then, this game is the epitome of taking 1,000 words to say what could have been said in 10.
Oh, so you mean how I write college level essays?
If
Yeah.
someone made this game as their thesis, that would be the one time it impresses me.
Well,
Don't
yeah.
Don't worry, I'll apply to a university using this game's entire script.
If you applied to an art school, that would be kind of avant-garde.
Yeah, it feels like they wanted to make a Shadow story, but they just didn't
What
have
to do
enough
with it.
ideas to
Yeah.
make a Shadow story,
Well,
and so they drew it
maybe-
out.
Maybe the
And then
pictures started running out of space.
I feel like the stories can't take that much space up.
No, I mean, they're
because
just
there's so
text.
much asset reuse. You're just reusing the same fights over and over.
Play in hell, but it would be funny if the game was like, well, hold on, how big is the ROM file? Excuse me, my legally obtained copy. 16 megabytes. I don't know how big a GBA cartridge
Yeah, I don't know
is.
the limit of GBA cartridges.
So that was really kind of pointless.
Think about the giant RPGs that you can play on the Game Boy Advance. This game is not going to take up that much space.
You say giant RPGs. I can't really think of one that's long 30 hours.
What? You're anyway. You're cutting, but I'm gonna just cut out this whole bit. Don't worry about it.
Thanks, Devin. They should have really cut out like most of the story, don't you think?
Hey.
You're making it harder for me to cut out things by saying that.
That's what I'm doing it on purpose. Anyhow,
Anyway.
yeah, I was really disappointed because I was like, Shadow story, this should be interesting. Plus, you talked it up beforehand, Devin, and then I was disappointed. But I should have expected that from this game, to be honest.
I mean, I feel like I was talking it up in the sense that, like, there is plot revelations about Emerald's nature, and Shadow himself is fine. But I feel like I also talked up the very stupid fact that you have to fight every other hero in the game just to get to the last battle.
Well, I expect as much from this game, but I just mean the story wasn't great. There's no payoff.
Yeah,
it's like,
that's the big problem. I couldn't figure it out.
Shadow's just like, you and me, Emerald, we're just weapons of war, and then Emerald's like, no, actually, I feel like I won't destroy the world today. Maybe tomorrow, but not today. And then Shadow's like, perhaps. And that's it.
Looks like you found some solace in our show. Stay if you like. In 30 minutes, we start over. which is to say that's the end of this, I think. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Alright.
Yeah, I have nothing more to say.
Well, with that abrupt halt, thank you all so much for watching. That is going to be the penultimate episode of Sonic Battle. Tune in next week when we do the true final ending that is like a lot of... There's going to be some emotions. Let's just say, not necessarily like emotional catharsis, just a lot of emotion.
Should be.
Yet more
Hopefully.
shit that I should cut out of my own dialogue. Anyway.
No, it's not allowed.
If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to share, like, comment, and subscribe. All of our links can be found in the link tree down below that is also shown on screen right here. I don't know if I can put a link in the video itself. I probably should check that. Anyway, we will see you next week. I hope you have a great night, and take care.